What do the great Roger Deakins and myself have in common? Talent-wise, sadly, I fear it probably isn't that much. However, there is a more grounded commonality, something that's a bit more tactile, and that is our fondness of the shoulder rig. And in my case, it's a reasonably newfound fondness. Because if you spend any significant time watching Deakins' work, or indeed any of the great observational masters, you'll notice that he is filming on the shoulder constantly. I used to clock that as purely a cinema thing or a big production thing, a little bit of a proper camera operator thing, and presumed it probably didn't really apply to me in the same way. Just the kind of thing that comes with big complex productions and big complex cameras. But then, at some point over the last year or so, I realized that I had gradually, step by step, ended up in a similar physical space, a little bit without noticing, until that shift became suddenly blindingly obvious. I want to talk about that transition today because it's one of those shifts that doesn't really sound particularly dramatic until you have felt it in your own body at 4 PM with an 8.5 kilo rig on your shoulder, your hands suddenly realizing they can relax because you've just perfected the balance. And your footage suddenly looks like it was shot by somebody who meant every single millimeter of camera movement. Most of us start our camera journey in pretty much the same way. You buy a camera, it's small, it's remarkably light, you handhold it with 2 hands like a precious bird, and it looks a bit wobbly. Then you discover IBIS, and you discover that if you tuck your elbows into your ribs, breathe out like a sniper, and walk with a little funny ninja walk type gait, the one where you pretend you're carrying a pint in each hand across a crowded pub, you can make it pass for professional. Then you get more serious. You want more polish, so naturally you expand to using more tools. Maybe then you go gimbal. I know I won't gimbal for a while. I think it's a bit of a rite of passage for the modern video maker. It teaches you things about 3-axis movement, and it solves the immediate problem of shake, but also simultaneously creates 3 axes of entirely new problems. You gain a certain ethereal float, yet you lose speed. You gain smoothness, yet you lose responsiveness. You gain the ability to do a very specific, a somewhat overused push-in shot, yet you then lose the ability to simply react like a human being in real, unpredictable environments. Then maybe you go further still. You start caring about fatigue, you start caring about repeatability, and you start caring about doing the job for a full 12-hour day without aching the entire journey home. So then you look at other support systems, EasyRig in my case. I own an EasyRig and it's brilliant for what it is, a way to take the weight off the arms and turn I can do this for 10 minutes into I can do this all afternoon. You might also get into a more niche, perhaps a bit more improvised world of camera saddles or camera pillows, wrap bag stuff. If you've never used a saddle before, I really recommend it. It seems pretty simple, but it's actually incredibly effective, especially for low-angle shots or shots from the navel where you yourself are the anchor. Eventually though, if your work pulls you towards the observational, and if your camera choice pulls you towards perhaps something that's heavier or more modular, if your tolerance for compromise drops, you end up on the shoulder every time. Because each step up that ladder is essentially you chasing one thing: stable, controllable movement that still feels alive, not robotic, not dead, not overly processed, alive but deliberate. When your camera is light, stability is a constant, exhausting fight. Every tiny physiological input shows up in the frame. Your pulse, your breath, the way your heel lands on the pavement, the micro movement your wrist corrects for a tilt. That's why we end up stacking tools like IBIS and gimbals. We're trying to tame a feather that just wants to fly away. But as your camera becomes more of a proper production tool, once it has the I/O you need, the monitoring you need, the V-Lock battery, the rods, the matte box, the focus motors, the handles, the base plate, you suddenly stop trying to stabilize something twitchy, and you start trying to support something that has its own, quite pleasing inertia. Somewhere around the 5 or 6 kilo mark, give or take, the movement becomes less about fighting wobble and more about guiding momentum. And I found that when the rig has that specific mass, the image has this extremely pleasing movement to it. Not because it's stable in the clinical gimbal-like sense, but because it has weight and inertia. Weight gives you damping, and damping gives you a subtle strength of image. Something that reads as very human-operated, but also still very controlled. And with that mass, suddenly the camera stops telegraphing every single twitch and muscle movement and exhalation you make. It effectively stops punishing you for being human. So clearly the obvious headline with shoulder rigs is stable footage, but the broader benefit, the thing I want to underline, is control. Control of framing, because your camera is anchored to your physical core. Control of movement, because you can pan, tilt, reframe, drift, and settle, all with the rig doing its own digital interpretation of exactly what you meant. And control of timing is exactly where the shoulder rig truly shines. When something happens in front of the lens, you can respond instantly, and the shot still holds together because your body is the gimbal. And this is the bit that I found gimbals really struggle with in the real world. A gimbal is gorgeous when the world agrees to be sort of a gimbal-friendly world. Smooth, planned, predictable. Whereas a shoulder rig is gorgeous when the world is chaotic, fast, awkward, tight, windy, salty, and bursting with real life. I've been shooting a lot of maritime stuff lately. I'm on boats, I'm in places where you have spray, constant movement, extremely uneven footing, and in that environment, as I've mentioned recently, a shoulder rig isn't just a style choice, it's a bit of a survival strategy. Of course, it isn't pure magic. The shoulder rig creates its own ergonomic equation that you have to solve. With a gimbal, your biceps and your forearms pay the price. With the shoulder, your actual shoulder pays, your core pays, your posture pays, your entire setup pays. Because if your balance is even slightly off, you're not just a bit uncomfortable, you're actively wasting energy the entire time you operate. The reason I sound so evangelical about balance all of a sudden is because I very quickly learnt it the painful way. In the initial days when I first started using a shoulder rig, while being afloat, I had the camera mounted too far forward on the plate, and this meant that the rig was effectively a lever. My shoulder was just the pivot point, and my arms were the only thing stopping the camera from diving onto the deck. After 2 hours on a rolling deck, my forearms were telling me to find a new profession. Then I started shifting the balance point back, initially using the bright Tangerine Create shoulder pad because it's easily adjustable, and suddenly the weight moved onto the shoulder properly. My hands stopped holding the rig and they just started steering it. So you really need to feel that transition. And that all might sound like a sort of academic physics, but it really isn't. Think about what it's like balancing the camera on anything, a gimbal, a slider. It's the same kind of principle. You have to find that sweet spot. That frees you to steer. And once you're steering, that then frees you to make choices. Free to work for longer, and then free to keep the frame exactly where you want it, without the physical distraction of discomfort, pain, or fatigue. Now, you might have spotted that I've recently been testing the bright Tangerine Create range, and I will just say it plainly. As a turnkey, all-in-one shoulder foundation, Create is superb. Out of the box, you can build something rock solid and properly engineered in a way that feels like it was designed by people who actually operate cameras, not people who simply design them in CAD. There's a bit of a risk that I end up sounding like a de facto ambassador for Bright Tangerine on the channel, but genuinely I think that they are pretty unparalleled when it comes to design, build, and execution of these hard parts. So it's crystal clear, and because I know people quite rightly care about this stuff, I'll link the most pertinent components in the description below, mainly so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, but those links aren't affiliate links. Bright Tangerine have been extremely generous in supporting this shoulder rig spiral I'm currently on. Some of the kit I bought myself, some of it is on loan and has to go back eventually, and a portion of it has been given to me to keep. I want that context to be out in the open because transparency matters to me and it should do to you, especially when we're talking about gear. Something else I will say, because it is relevant if you are even thinking about spending money in this area, is that Bright Tangerine stuff is not the cheapest route into rigging. And I get that, because most of us have a mental budget ceiling for bits of metal that hold onto a camera. But one of the things you learn in this field, and honestly probably in most fields, is that you tend to get what you pay for. I've done the whole journey of buying the best value version of a component, and then it turns up a bit rough, or it doesn't quite fit right, or it flexes, or it fails under use, and then you replace it. Then you buy the slightly nicer one. Then you replace that as well. And you basically realize you could have afforded the good one all along. I find the real value, long term, is buying something that is genuinely well made, engineered properly, and finished properly, then only buying it once, because it lasts. It holds its tolerances, it doesn't become a point of failure, and it stays in your kit for years, outliving cameras certainly. Alongside Create, Bright Tangerine have a more modular shoulder ecosystem, and the piece I got particularly drawn to was the Kasbah shoulder pad. Part of that was the incredible matrix resin that they do on the hand grips, which feel absolutely fantastic, but chiefly because the Kasbah lets you build a setup that flexes job by job. Create is the everything you need right now solution. Kasbah is the build exactly what you need precisely for this job solution. For my own workflow at High Water Films, the Kasbah made sense because I wanted to switch between shoulder and tripod more fluidly without needing or owning a VCT receiver. So a rigging route that really clicked for me was a combination of the brand new Leftfield Mini, the Kasbah pad, and some long titanium drumsticks. That gave me a shoulder rig that felt genuinely versatile. The core stays consistent, while the outer edges can change depending on whether I'm on a boat, in a studio, or in a tight interior. It allows me to build the camera like a proper workstation for each specific environment. If you're thinking of moving into shoulder rigs, I'll give you one practical thing that matters more than any brand choices. Build for balance before you build for accessories. You can have the most expensive pad in the world, the best hand grips, and the most prestigious base plate, yet if the center of mass is too far forward, you're still doing a deadlift with your wrists. Get the camera sitting where it naturally wants to sit, on your shoulder, without you touching the handles, and only then should you add the rest. That tweak will save you hours of discomfort, and more importantly, it makes you a better operator immediately. If that kind of practical, field-learned and tested insight is at all useful, give the video a like and consider subscribing. It genuinely helps. And if you have strong opinions on shoulder rigs, drop a comment below. I'm genuinely curious if I'm just super late to the party or an extreme outlier, and also how people arrive at their preferred way of working. And one more quick thing, if you want to see more of the behind the scenes, specific rig builds, or the little problem solving moments that don't always fit into a full episode, I'm on Instagram as JackFilmed. That's usually where I post the in-between stuff, especially when I'm in the middle of a job and the story is still unfolding. It's a good place to see the gear actually getting salty and used in the wild. Now, an area where my setup still isn't as refined as it could be is monitoring. I'm using the massive and fantastic DSM-C3 7-inch touch monitor, which I love. It gives you full camera control as well as a brilliant picture, and for the Komodo ecosystem with a small screen on top and limited number of customizable buttons, that really matters. But rigging the camera on the shoulder introduces a slightly annoying geometry and control problem. To focus comfortably with your eyes, you want the monitor at a sensible distance away. To operate comfortably, you want it in the right part of your field of view. To shoot wide, you can't have it creeping into frame. Currently I'm booming it out on a Titan 2 arm, which works really well, but if I'm not careful, especially if I've repositioned the monitor and I'm using the Laowa Ranger, which I have been a lot, at the wide end, the monitor can inadvertently creep into shot. At 17mm, you have to be pretty disciplined with positioning. Discipline, however, is a bit of a finite resource when you're bouncing around on the deck of a fishing boat, and you've got a million other things on your mind. So I'm increasingly wondering if an EVF is the way to go. RED themselves make an EVF, and I have no doubt that it's phenomenal, but it is unfathomably expensive. I've seen a few recommendations now for the Kinefinity E Eagle with SDI, so that looks like it might be a decent third-party EVF. And perhaps that's the final piece that turns this form factor from very good into this is how I want to operate from now on forevermore. If you run your Komodo X with an EVF, please get at me. I recently weighed the camera rig and it came in at 8.5 kilos on the nose. That number sounds pretty manageable until you have to do it all day. The first half of the day, no problem. I'm fine. I'm an athlete. I'm thinking about the shot, not the strain. Then you have a break for lunch, have a sandwich, stroll around, rest, relax. When you go to pick the camera up again, that's when you start becoming keenly aware that you are and have been carrying something pretty heavy. I, and this may surprise you to look at me, am no Jason Morris when it comes to my somatotype. I have what I'd call a competent coastal build, which is just another way of saying that my shoulder isn't exactly a naturally padded shelf for this kind of thing. Part of the solution, I think, is simply going to be conditioning. Maybe a bit of strength and resilience training, and letting the body adapt to this comparatively new demand I'm putting on it. Shoulder rigs are not just gear, they are a physical practice, like anything. Another benefit I've really found with the Kasbah and Leftfield Mini setup is lens support. The Laowa Ranger isn't exactly a gigantic studio zoom, but it is still a cine zoom with just enough length and leverage. If you're running a fizz system, like I like to, you can definitely end up over-talking things. When a lens isn't properly supported, the motor can slip, which obviously is bad in the moment, it can ruin a take, but also it places unnecessary stress on gear and it can damage teeth either on the motor side or worse on the lens side. Once the lens is supported, the union between the gears becomes genuinely immovable. And in some ways it's a bit of an essential kindness really. You're building a platform that lets the tools operate the way they were designed to operate, rather than constantly asking them to fight flex. This is one of those broader benefits of the shoulder rig system that I'm building. The other thing I'm enjoying, like I mentioned at the top, and something that's more achievable with the Kasbah as opposed to the Create range, is exactly how modular my shoulder rig is becoming. Now that I've stopped thinking of it as a fixed object, and now build it out on a job-by-job basis. On some shoots, I know the camera is going to be on my shoulder all day, so I'll build it like it's going to live there. Full rig, arm extensions, hand grips, everything set up so that my hands can relax into a nice, natural, neutral position. On a job this week, I didn't have a first AC pulling focus. I had an assistant, but she was there for other tasks. So I was doing the full camera operating myself, and that's one of those reasons I like shoulder. You can run a fairly complex camera while still being nimble, as long as the rig is balanced and your controls are where your hands naturally land. On days like that, the proof really is in the footage. The image feels so intentional. The movement has weight, and the frame feels composed even when I was moving quickly. You can see why this is the default mode for so many high-level operators, not because it's just a vibe or a look, because it's a practical answer to the question, how do I keep in control while staying fast? To sort of wrap this up, shoulder rigs represent a shift in how I manage the camera. No longer am I trying to stabilize the camera, I am trying to support a camera that is already inherently stable. That change in mindset, for me, is why the shoulder rig is an apex support system. This isn't the end of my learning and development, of course, far from it, but it is the first time I felt like the camera can be fully built for the job, fully robust, with all the I/O and power I need, while still being a tool that I can move and be agile with. You gain inertia, damping, and maintain control. You inherit a bit of fatigue and the need for perfect balance, but the output is so worth it. When it's right, the footage looked like it came from a person who knew exactly where the camera should be and why. And that ultimately is the point. Not stability because you're trying to remove shake, but stability in service of purpose. I don't know if any of that made sense because it was kind of like a whole jumble of feelings and thoughts that had been scrawled in a notebook while I was in the bow bunk of a trawler, and they're a bit all over the place. But just to give you a bit of a real-world update before I disappear back into the edit cave, at the moment I am properly in the weeds, cutting interviews and shaping footage from the fishing project. It's one of those edits where you can't really rush it because the whole thing lives or dies in the nuance. In amongst all of that, I've also been lucky enough to be part of a small cohort of alpha testers for a pretty exciting product from Jacinto and Brad. I can't say too much about it at this stage, but it has genuinely helped with sifting through some of the fairly unwieldy interview responses. If you've ever stared down hours of transcripts and thought, man, there's got to be a better way, then yes, there is. But more on that in the future, hopefully. Also, next week, Meg and I are flying out to Egypt for a shoot, so I'm not completely sure what those two factors do to the YouTube schedule in the very short term, but I might end up trying to do something from the field whilst we're out there. Not a full-on vlog, because I kind of feel like we live in a post-vlog society, and that's not really what this channel is, but perhaps a little bit from the field or forward operating base. That kind of episode. Something that still feels a little bit useful and remains in the spirit of Western approaches. Either way, thank you in advance for your patience if things do get slightly wobbly schedule-wise for a week or two. I appreciate it more than you know. Right, I'm Jack. Whatever this is, I'm calling Western approaches. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.